Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I probably wouldn't call this an extreme horror film even for 1970 when it came out, but it's a fun little exploitation film that I've always wanted to see, and I found it for cheap online, and it's the Grindhouse releasing, so that's awesome. And it is I Drink Your Blood, which, I mean, Grindhouse has always had great releases. It came with a poster that's hanging up. Uh, Cannibal Holocaust, Pieces, and I believe The Beyond were all Grindhouse versions. That might actually be Blue Underground, I'm not sure. Yes, it came out in 1970, and at the time it came out, there was a 1964 film called I Eat Your Skin that hadn't been released yet. So it was shelved, and it actually got put on a double bill with I Drink Your Blood. That's actually the poster that came with the DVD. And, I mean, directed by David Durston, who I don't really, not much, he was also the screenwriter for this. Hasn't really done a lot. Doesn't star anyone I'm familiar with. The only person I can click on is J.D. Wong. But, I mean, it really is like any other exploitation film. Very, very, very cheap, low quality, everything. Sort of a nonsensical story, but it's fun, bloody when it needs to be, and it's entertaining. It's not quite as bloody or gory as a title or a cover like this would entail, but it has enough. The story is very simple. I mean, 1970, the Manson family was everywhere. Life, Time, all magazines. Manson had become a celebrity in his own right. So, it's actually about a bunch of this hippie satanic cult, very Manson-esque, which I want to get the guy's name. Bhaskar Roy Chowdhury. He plays Horace Bones, who's this sort of Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez looking hippie, Satan-obsessed cult leader. He's got, there's Andy. It's like 5 or 6 of them. They get to this small town. Yeah, it's one of those small town overrun by a threat movies. They meet this young girl named Sylvia. Some of them rape and beat her. And, she's found, brought home. Their van breaks down, so they have to stay in this town. But most of it's abandoned, so they start squatting in this abandoned house. Sylvia's grandfather goes over there to, pretty much tell him to fuck off and defend his granddaughter. They beat him up, force LSD into him. Then his young grandson, Pete, who I will say, the acting for the most part isn't that great. It's an exploitation film. The acting is not going to be superb. But the kid is exceptionally bad. And if you want to play a drinking game, I know I sound like shit. It's fucking allergies. Every time the kid says grandpa, take a sip. See how drunk you are by the end of this movie. He gets pissed that they, beat up his grandpa. When he thinks he can go set things right, so he grabs a rifle, goes outside. There's a rabid dog that he shoots and kills, goes back inside, and they work. Pete and Sylvia work at this local bakery. So the cultists go in there to buy these meat pies, but Pete has taken a syringe, taken rabies contaminated blood from the dog, puts it in all the meat pies. They eat it, and they turn into foaming lunatic zombies, essentially. I mean, 2 years after Night of the Living Dead, 3 or 4 years before The Crazies, but it is that kind of movie. Like, not really. They act like zombies, but of course they're not. It's like The Crazies because, you know, they want to kill with weapons. And that's basically the film. You have them start acting weird and violent, more and more people get infected, and then our other characters have to find out what's going on and how they stop it. Essentially, that's the film. I will say, I really like the cinematography. I always like how low budget things can look. Jacques Demarquois, if I pronounce that correctly, uncredited. Joseph Mangine. And the set designs. I love the look of the abandoned house. It's got this really low budget feel. Even for like a deluxe edition, they didn't clean it up too much. It still has that gritty, grainy feel, probably because it's a Grindhouse release. But, I mean, the movie is more fun than anything. I think at the end of the day, that's what it's supposed to be. Not really much to go into. I mean, after they eat the meat pies, the first ones to get infected is, there's the black guy of the group. He gets it first. He starts acting all weird. He stabs this guy to death that they had in their house for whatever reason. Then Horace, the leader, gets it. And I mean, they're running all... People get, like, start acting infected at different times. Like them, it's that night. Then, like, the following day, other ones will start acting that way. The bloodshed... I mean, you have one scene where a guy did chase Horace around. They ended up in like the attic area, and this gun drops. And we have like this standoff sort of bit where the camera looks at the gun, looks at each of their faces. Which during that scene, I do want to talk about the music as well, but during that whole scene, there's like this long standoff of who's going to go for the gun. The guy eventually does. Horace stabs him. And when he goes to grab it, it looks sort of like Herschel Gordon Lewis type guts come out of him. The music, during that whole scene, it sounds like a constant, like, bug buzz, like a buzzing. Constant. And that's pretty much the score. It's just Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Night of the Living Dead type sound effects that I think really work well for this kind of movie. It did have a Chainsaw Massacre type vibe to it just because of how low budget it is. One of the cultists is a pregnant woman. She actually stabs herself when she finds out she has rabies. I think what really kicks it off is there's this other woman who senses something's wrong and everyone's sort of going against each other. So she just runs off into the night, gets picked up by a truck full of construction workers, having sex with one of them, and that's when she kind of starts to change. He and his buddies think something's just wrong with her. But the next day, when law enforcement gets to that house, it's a house full of rabid construction workers. It's like she got to all of them. And I mean, some parts are kind of slow, like the beginning, but once the rabies really starts kicking in, it is a pretty fun film to watch. I know I'm not really getting too much into it, but it's because there's really not a whole lot to say. I mean, with exploitation films, I mean, obviously, acting is going to be bad. The blood and the effects could be there, could not, or if they look shitty, that's part of the charm. Low production, nonsensical story, but so really only talk about, I guess, the juicy parts, but the score being just these like ominous, weird sound effects, I think really works. Excuse me, sorry. I could be wrong, but I don't think rabies had really been the subject of a horror film before, at least not what I've seen. And just the way people go about it, it's so like low budget B movie. Because the kid, one of the cultists who didn't eat one of the pies, has a thing with Sylvia, the granddaughter. So the grandson, they're like making out in the barn, and the grandson goes to stop her, and that's when he tells her what he did. And everyone's just so nonchalant about everything. They do treat rabies, you know, they put like white foam on their mouth. Of course it looks over the top. But the grandfather is also a doctor. So he takes some blood, that's how he finds out it's rabies. Now, I know loud sounds, to an extent light, can upset those that are rabid, but I didn't know that something or someone with rabies had hydrophobia. I didn't know fear of water was a part of it. I mean, if it's not, it's not, but because like when law enforcement sees the house full of construction workers that are rabid, they just run down to the creek and then they just stop. Like they just splash it with water and they're fine. You have a nice fight between Horace, the leader, and I'm just gonna say the black guy that gets it because I really don't remember much of any of the cultists' names. They don't really address each other. They're like the first to turn, and they sort of go throughout the whole film. They have a fight at the end. He shoves this sword. We see the sword like hit Horace's back. There's like a quick cut to it out of his mouth already. So there's a lot of sharp cuts like that, which I don't mind. Not very in depth, I know, but it's a fun exploitation film. Yeah, it's not as over the top gory as say like the Herschel Gordon Lewis films of this time. But it's still pretty fun. I mean, yeah, and even though we don't really see a city being taken over, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or even more recent films like Slither, or even The Blob, or anything like that, it is a pretty small scale. Not as bloody as you would think, but I thought this movie was really fun. It's low budget, bad quality for everything. Really do like the sound effects though. I do like the sound of the score. Love the cover. I see how this could be a classic. I do, whenever I think of the term grindhouse or like drive-in horror, even though I just saw this for the first time, this is the kind of movie I think about. And yeah, just really just a lot of fun. I wish I could go more in depth with it, but at, at that point, I would just be talking about every beat of the film. Just cultists eat meat pies that a kid put rabid blood in. They all turn and start acting violently. But it's a hell of a lot of fun, and that's a kick-ass cover. It would have been even better if I Eat Your Skin came with a release like this, or was even added to it. Comes with a bunch of features. I mean, 4 never before seen deleted footage, including the original blood-drenched ending deemed too disturbing for 70s audiences. Well, I wish I checked that out. The main menu on this is kind of funny just because it has like that cutout animation. Like, there's like the layout in the background and then just like that sort of 3D people walking by. Makes it look like a really bad quality like arcade game. Provocative commentary, on-camera interviews, gallery, and rare and shocking film of Bhaskar performing the Evil King Cobra dance, plus others. But anyway, I thought this film was fun. If you're an exploitation or a grindhouse fan, or even just films like of this period, or just, I guess, odd kind of films like of this kind, just bloody, it was shocking first time, let's check it out. Don't go into it thinking you're gonna get the Human Centipede of that time, or the Serbian film of that time, because it's just not that extreme. But I thought this movie was a lot of fun. But anyway, thank you for watching.